Hi there, welcome to Suds and Scullery. This is Elizabeth. Today I'm making sauerkraut. Traditionally, sauerkraut has just two ingredients, cabbage and salt. I began by pulling off the withered outer leaves of the cabbage and then I quartered it. Next, I cut out the hard core of the cabbage. I will save the core for later, as I will use it to help submerge the cabbage in the brine. After that, I begin to shred the cabbage with a knife. You could also choose to use a food processor or a mandolin, but for me, a knife is the simplest. I sort of shred it to about 1/8 of an inch. Once I finish shredding the cabbage, I weigh it. I calculate 2% of the weight of the cabbage for the amount of salt I will add. Once I've added the salt, I begin to knead or massage the cabbage. I will keep this up for at least 7 to 10 minutes. This will help the cabbage to release its natural juices, and these juices are what makes up the brine that will facilitate the fermentation process. When my hands get tired, I switch to a hand masher just to keep things going. You can see here the juices being released from the cabbage in the kneading process. The fresher the cabbage, the more juice it will produce. This cabbage is not fresh from the garden, so it's not as juicy as I'd like. I'll probably have to add a little saltwater brine to my jars when I'm bottling. I'll fill the jars about halfway full, pack it down so there are no air pockets, then I will fill them some more. I want to leave about at least 1 inch at the top of my jars because as the cabbage begins to ferment, it will need room to bubble and expand. Once I've packed the cabbage sufficiently, I'll pour the brine over the cabbage and I'll cut out circles from the discarded outer leaves to place over the shredded cabbage. I have a couple of glass weights that I use to hold down the leaves on top of the cabbage. The weights ensure that the shredded cabbage stays submerged, otherwise you risk mold forming. If I run out of glass weights, then I'll use the core from the cabbage as a weight. For this last little jar of sauerkraut, I just don't have enough brine to adequately submerge the cabbage. So I mixed up a little 2% saltwater solution and I pour a little bit of that over the cabbage so that it's covered. And for this jar, I will use the core of the cabbage as my weight because the mouth of the jar is too small to fit the glass weight. I'll leave my jars sitting at room temperature for at least a week, closer to 2, and I'll keep them in a dish that has sides in case there is any spillover from the jars. Thanks for watching.